you both have a background that brings in science and research as well. So maybe let's start talking about the changes that you have witnessed or you're witnessing in consumer choices, and whether or not these choices are really keeping sustainability in mind. How can we better educate the consumer on sustainability importance without taking away the fear or concerns they have on the cost and affordability? So the question is for both of you, and I'll start with you.
Thank you so much, Jessie, for starting with me. I'm happy to be here with you. So when it comes to consumer, this is actually the most integral part, because when we look at sustainable food systems, the main focus, unfortunately, all the time is from the main source all the way across the value chain, but not a lot focus on the consumer, because it's not always easy to deal with the consumer. And awareness amongst the consumer is the most important, and that's why maybe this is kind of the focus right now that we have in the UAE, and that's where actually we come working with the NEMA initiative that started, from this collaborative work between the ministry and Emirates Foundation, where we focused on retailers, hospitality sector before, but now we're focusing mainly on consumers. So whether it's educational programs, for example, in schools, whether it's, in restaurants, coming up with these incentives, this is something that we're focusing on. Then you have the industry and what they can do to actually promote sustainability in the food system. Simply, triggering those consumers to make smarter choices, just simply by showing, for example, that this product is locally produced, this product is green. You see a lot of that green, label across products, whether it's food or not. So simple triggers like this are important for us to simply emphasize on it's important for the consumers. And even if you take, kids to the supermarket, they can see those labels. They would be interested in what does it mean. So we do have all of these integrated in our policies, actually. So even we work with the Ministry of Education. There is a lot of emphasis on integrating food security in general and sustainability specifically as well. And you see a lot of awareness, especially when you go all the way to universities. You see a lot of more youth interested into going into sustainability programs, because now they understand that sustainability is not, doesn't work in one pillar only. They know that they have opportunity everywhere, and they know the importance of sustainability for their own future.
So Amal, I guess the same question, but also I'd love for you to give a little bit insight on Naama per se. Naama, for the non-Arabic speakers, Naama is blessing. And this is why the name was to discuss food waste and how to maybe rewire our brain to think about food waste.
Thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this amazing event. Naama is really a platform that engages everyone across the food value chain and the supply chain, starting all the way from production to retailers, farmers, hospitality, and households. Building on what Amal highlighted, Naama is really about making sure that we all collaborate. It's about creating a movement towards change, and that change is really to bring about sustainability to our resources, making sure that we take collective action, that we co-create the right solutions with the different sectors to address the issue of overconsumption and food waste, and food loss as well at the production end. The initiative really is a collaborative effort between the Emirates Foundation, the Ministry of Climate Change, and the Presidential Court. And it's been launched in early 2020 with the aim of meeting one of the key pillars of the food security strategy, and that is to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by the year 2030. Some of the key areas where that Naama really focuses on is, First of all, as Amal mentioned, awareness. Awareness is a key pillar in Na'ma, where we're trying to educate the UAE community about how to be more conscious consumers, more responsible consumers. How do we adopt more sustainable practices in our day-to-day life, so sustainability becomes a living
lifestyle.
A lifestyle. And also it's about behavioral change. How do we change some of the current practices, not just as individuals, but also practices that are happening through different sectors that are leading to food loss and waste. The other pillar is looking at evidence and data and making sure that we can actually measure food loss and waste. Right now, it is a key challenge because we don't have separation of food waste from the general waste.
Yeah.
So that's something that we need to work with waste management companies and the industries to change. Policies is another area that Amal touched on, and basically making sure that we review existing policies, we create the right policies and regulations that create a more enabling environment for food loss and waste and sustainability. And something that you spoke about earlier that is really important is innovation and technology. And how do we actually utilize innovation and technology to create efficiencies, to show how we can utilize new technologies to support food loss and waste reduction, not just efficiently, but supporting the industry in terms of cost savings and making sure that we can speed up the process as well. So this is really, in summary, what Na'ma is trying to achieve, but it's not something we can achieve in isolation. It is really a collaborative approach that requires the engagement and the participation of all key sectors across the food value chain.
So thank you, Khuloud, because now you tossed the question to Amal that I wanted to ask, which is about metrics and measurability. Can you give us some insight on what are some of the metrics that are being used to measure the progress of the UAE on sustainability, which is very difficult because we hear a lot about, there are steps and moves in every country, but still there is no internationally known, maybe clear metric standard to measure. How do we solve that? Sorry for the question, it's tough.
This is actually a complicated topic that we do really need to learn a little bit more about. So for food, for sustainable food, we need to look at the entire value chain. So there is something called the life cycle analysis. The life cycle analysis basically looks at the entire value chain from growing the food or, growing each seed, feeding that seed, watering it, all the way to the retailer. So, and throughout this journey, there is, the measurement of how much land we're using, how much water we're using, how much we're emitting, how much fertilizers we're using. So there are all of these measures taken, how much gas we're using in the transferring this final product from one place to another. So the metric is quite complicated, but what makes it even more complicated that it gets really difficult to be measured once it leaves the retailer. So once it leaves the retailer and goes to the consumer, to the individuals, the restaurant, hospitality sector, how can you really measure it? Does it go to waste? Is it recycled? It's not really that easy to do. In the UAE, what we're trying to do is, we think this is the main thing and the key thing to actually do, which we're doing now with the Na'ma initiative, and directly with our private sector to establish a baseline study. And Khuloud's team is working really hard in supporting us into establishing that baseline study, because without the data, we cannot create the right policies. We cannot regulate the food industry in general. So throughout this, this program, we're trying to collect data on how much food are we wasting, how much food we're preventing from going to waste, and how much basically CO2 we're preventing from emitting, how much money we are saving for those companies. Of course, this is very important. We started with a couple of the hospitality sectors, and of course, how do we get that data? You've mentioned innovation. This is how we get that data, through those companies using innovations, technologies, and then processing that data. That tells us how much we're emitting, how much we're not. And then that basically is how the UAE is right now beginning to measure the sustainability in the food industry. Yes, we start only with the hospitality sector, but this is our way to kickstart this huge endeavor. We're moving slowly, inshallah, toward the industry itself, whether it's from processing, from production even, and all the way to the consumer, inshallah.
There's definitely a lot of challenges, and you're right, you have to start somewhere. And plus, the hospitality industry, I think, also offers you a lot of available data on a large scale, on a mass scale. So if I were maybe, Khuloud, to go back to Naama as a prototype, let's say, of a sustainability initiative, what would an initiative like Naama need to scale up so we can maybe see larger results on the community?
I think this is a very important question, and I would like to build on some of the things that Amal just highlighted. One, coming back to building a baseline for the UAE. So right now we're embarking on a new study, as Amal mentioned, that will allow us to create the right indices for the UAE for food loss and waste, so that we are able to track and measure performance. But also we have started piloting different initiatives with industry partners from hospitality. We started by introducing behavioral science, where we introduced certain nudges that allow you, one, to raise awareness. Two, it works where you actually introduce simple steps that change the behavior of people. So they start to walk in restaurants and canteens, they see a lot of messaging around food loss and waste, and then they go to the buffet and they see what an ideal portion looks like. We all go to the buffet and we see people piling up their plate, and then they probably eat a third of that, and then the rest goes in the bin.
Waste, yeah.
So, and then we added something else in staff canteens, for example, where the staff actually, when they scrape off their plates, we change the bins. We utilize transparent bins so people can actually see how much food is going into the bin, which also increases their awareness. And after applying this for a number of weeks, we actually saw that, and we learned that food loss and waste was decreased in those restaurants and canteens by almost up to 44%.
44?
Yes.
That's
so you
quite
see
a large percentage.
simple steps that you add like this.
That's quite large.
And now we're taking this a step further. We actually, 2 weeks ago, we had a workshop. Through the Naama Pledge, we've invited many hotels and restaurants to pledge to actually implement such nudges in their own settings. We had around more than 90 entities pledge and commit to following this. We've created a guide that is a guide on reducing food loss and waste, where people can follow the actual steps. And now we're scaling up this through different workshops with the entities. And this is actually allowing us now to collect data. So we've created the Naama Data Hub. All these entities will be feeding this data hub with measurements around how much food is being recovered, how much food is being lost, and how much food is being wasted, so that we can then co-create the right interventions and solutions together to try and minimize food loss and waste.
The fabulous idea of how a small step can make really a massive impact and also gather data on the
Yes.
side. So that's two in one. Amal, if we can discuss a little bit leveraging food systems. In a way, I know this is also a very complicated question that does not have one, short answer, but how do you think food systems can be maybe leveraged to mitigate the environmental effects that we have of the food and beverage industry?
So
I
this
know.
is a very complicated
Yeah.
question indeed. So there are many ways, honestly, but you have to think always about it. If you do one thing that you think is sustainable, then you have to think what are the impacts of it. So, for example, we always in the UAE we promote, buying sustainable homegrown food, for example, which is something that we promote for eating fresh food. This is lower carbon footprint because there's not a lot of fuel used in transferring this food. But then you have that food used a lot of our land, some of our water, a lot of fertilizers. It emitted maybe some carbon dioxide. So we need to have that a bit of balance. Food systems, and not just in the UAE, across the world, they have to have that little bit of balance. So, for example, in the UAE, yes, we want to increase our domestic food production because this is important for us, for our food security. This is important for our farmers to increase their, economic return. But we also know that we depend highly on food imports. So the balance that we're trying to do is, yes, we incentivize farmers to produce food more sustainably. So here also comes the role of R&D. Here comes the role of private sectors and technology development. We're always focusing on adopting and adapting technologies that are, maybe focus on minimizing water use or using crops that are adaptable to saline soils or heat. So we're trying to find that balance. And this is how we will have to leverage the food system towards sustainability, to find that balance. I'll give you an example, I'll give you an example about livestock, for example.
Yeah.
So livestock is always thought of as one of the biggest contributor to CO2 emission, but is it really? Is it really the highest, emitter of CO2 emissions? Well, if it comes into Latin America, for example, it might be, because other than, having livestock over there, you have to go through deforestation to provide that pasture land for the livestock to grow. So it's not just the methane that's contributing, but you're also going through deforestation. But then when you go to the Netherlands, for example, not much deforestation happening, and livestock can graze happily, or maybe in Australia. But then when this livestock is exported from Australia, for example. So there's always that give and take. There's always, yes, we can minimize some, CO2 emission from here, but then we will have to emit a little bit more from here. So it's a question of finding that balance, really.
Yes, and adapting to the environment, and also maybe recognizing the pros and cons of each environment, be it demographics, geography, climate, and all of that. Khuloud, if we were to maybe focus a little bit more on innovation, I know both of you are very passionate about this topic. You spend a lot of time researching, working, looking into some ideas that may or may not work here, specifically in the UAE. Maybe what role do you see innovation playing in the very near future? Before, when we used to talk about innovation, I, as a journalist, used to think, this is not until, 10 more years. But no, it's not. It's moving at the speed of light. So give us some maybe practical ideas of the role of innovation in this sector.
Innovation and technology is actually a key enabler in the NAMA strategy. So I'll give maybe practical examples of how we've supported new innovations. We actually last year we sponsored the Tamkeen Food Tech Challenge, which supports new innovations and technologies in the food systems field. We've introduced a new pillar on food loss and waste. So the competition has had around more than 700 submissions. In the shortlisting, out of the 12 shortlisted startups, 8 of them were focused on food loss and waste innovations and solutions. Yeah. We started basically working with some of these solutions, and it's amazing how they can add value to the ecosystem, to the food ecosystem, where, for example, we've worked with a startup called Replate during Expo 2020, where actually they have a digital solution that connects food donors. So if you're a restaurant and you have food surplus that you want to donate, the system picks up that and connects you with a charity where you can actually give away some of this surplus. Yeah. So this is a great way of diverting surplus food from reaching landfill. Otherwise, this food would have gone to waste. Another solution that we have worked with during Ramadan is called Akeltech, which is smart fridges. Again, surplus food was picked up from Dar restaurants and hotels, one of our key partners, and it was placed in these fridges where it made free meals accessible to low-income workers. And these fridges actually, you can heat up the food, and it's perfectly edible food as per the safety regulations. We've also worked closely with key partners, Weno Solutions, who actually have a solution that tracks in commercial kitchens, and it gives data to chefs around what kind of food and vegetables are going into the bin, so that they can adjust the amount of food that's actually being purchased and utilized to reduce food loss and waste. So it's simply a camera that takes footage of the amount and the types of food that go into the bin, so they can know what are the different types of food and accordingly adjust their purchasing. And many of these innovations and solutions are really adding value in terms of cost savings for even the industry. And we plan to continue to also promote a lot of these new technologies and innovations. What we are doing in Ni'ma, we are doing small pilots with these innovations, because this will help also prove to the industry and to the different sectors how they may work with us to scale up some of these pilots and work with these innovations to create more efficiencies.
So what I hear you say, both of you actually, a lot of what you're mentioning about innovation, at the gist of it is data gathering and more importantly than gathering, understanding that data and using it properly. So we're all surrounded by data and quantifiable data when it comes to trying to solve these challenges. Amal, in your role, all the tough questions are going to you. but actually, this is a good question about the toughness of it. What are some of the hardest challenges you think are facing now in your capacity to be able to execute some of these innovative ideas? What's standing in your way, other than my annoying questions?
Yeah. No, it's definitely a valid question. How can we adopt these innovations?
Yeah.
How can we scale up? So for this, I need to highlight on a couple of global initiatives that we are leading as a country to begin with. So one huge initiative that was started by the UAE in collaboration with the United States of America was the Aim for Climate.
Yeah.
So this is basically an initiative where we are encouraging innovations and technology for the agriculture and food system. So this is a huge emphasis by these two countries, who were joined by hundreds of other countries and organizations, to utilize the innovations, technology, no matter how simple this technology was, into creating a more sustainable food system. This is one thing. So we are promoting research, development, technology adoption, and through this initiative, actually, there is a lot of funding provided by all the partners. So this is one thing that we're doing. Another thing, Her Excellency, the Minister actually have very recently announced that we are inviting all member countries of the UN to join the UAE in a new declaration of transforming food systems. Mm-hmm. And how can we transform food systems, technology and innovation? And having technology and innovations at universities, research institutions, or startup is not enough. So Khuloud, for example, you mentioned Winnow. Winnow, when we started working with them, it was kind of a startup. It was just starting to work with the UAE, with a couple of restaurants, with a couple of, the hotels here and there. But then they started working with Dubai Future Foundation, for example. They learned how to become more visible in the UAE. They learned how to approach the restaurant and how to make, their case more valid for those, hospitality sector. We need to make sense of the economic value at the end, because let's be honest, that's how we can, promote technologies. That's how we can prove that these are valid, that these are beneficial. So this, linkage between the private sector and the government is very important. And what we have seen so far through the work between the government and the private sector, we were able to gather data, we were able to raise awareness, we were able to find new people that are interested into utilizing these technologies. So now it's not just actually about measuring how much food we're producing. No, we actually are raising awareness and pushing more technologies that are actually reducing and recycling, food waste. So now we have companies that are, recycling food products and producing other materials that can be used as soil enhancers. So basically now you have the full
circular, yes,
full cycle.
Yeah.
Now we can, say yes, we do have a circular food system. Then you also have another company that recycle oils or waste oil from restaurants, and they use this to produce, biodiesel, and all the major companies and oil countries in the UAE buy from them. So this is now basically, yes, we do have a circular food system. This is simply done by the close collaboration between government and private sector, because if we don't talk, nothing will happen really.
Absolutely.
And both myself and Khuloud knows this very well, because we wouldn't be able to do any of that. We would not be able to gather data. We would not be able to raise awareness if we were not able to have that linkage.
Definitely, we heard a lot about public and private sector collaboration for us to be where we are. In the last few minutes, I know you want to also input on this idea, so I'll let you do that, and maybe also add your final thoughts on where would you like to see the UAE focusing on, be it from a consumer level or from a government level in the next 5 years.
I think I want to just build on what just
Yes.
Amal highlighted. I think Na'ma is really very much about collaboration. I mean, Na'ma has been created as a platform really to engage everyone, to bring the right partners to the table, to work together very closely, to co-create the right solutions to tackle food loss and waste. And I want to highlight also the fact that we also have been taking very practical steps to try and implement different solutions that give you tangible results. One of the things we've been doing, for example, to close the loop and create a more circular economy within Nama is, again, building on the notion of raising awareness and making sure that people start changing some of the current behaviors and practices when it comes to especially the UAE being a very hospitable culture with a lot of events, a lot of big things where a lot of food goes to waste. So we have created a zero waste model whereby we have brought all the right key players to the table. So food banks play a role, waste management companies, and solutions like Reloop, where they actually work with us at these events where surplus food gets picked up by the food banks. Unedible food gets picked up by solutions like Reloop, who take it and turn it into, who composite it and turn it into fertilizer. This way you're actually reducing the amount of food waste that ends up in landfill. And what a lot of people don't know is the fact that 10% of the carbon emissions is coming from food loss and waste. So the more you divert food waste from reaching landfill, the better environmental impact you're creating on reducing greenhouse gases and carbon emissions. So this is another circular economy model that we've been practically applying, and we're looking at also how to scale this up at the national level. But coming back to your question around what do we want to see, we want to continue to collaborate at the national and international level. We want to be able to achieve the UAE's target of reducing food loss and waste by 50% by 2030. We cannot achieve that alone. We need to work closely with industry, with different sectors, to basically implement and change some of the current practices that are actually leading to food loss and waste. We want to make sure that we increase the level of awareness of consumers. We all as individuals have a responsibility and a role to play in changing some of our day-to-day habits that contribute to food loss and waste. We have something in Nama called the top 10 tips of simple things we can do as individuals. When we go to restaurants, we don't overbuy. When we go to the supermarkets, we don't purchase things that we don't need, because we end up storing them at home and then we don't eat them. They go to waste.
Just don't shop when you're hungry.
Yes.
Or don't go to a restaurant when you're really hungry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
abundance is...
you know, at the national level, the UAE has committed to combat food loss and waste. So we all need to join this movement and to make it happen. So we all really have a key role to play to contribute.
And definitely there's a lot of overlap, as you mentioned, between private, public, consumer, food producers, suppliers, and buyers as well. So this is a weave of players. I know that we're out of time. We can continue this topic. Amal, any final thoughts? If you have, we can spare a few seconds.
Thank you. So I want to mention and emphasize that, yes, we talked a lot about food loss and waste today because we're very excited about the topic. We both work on it quite a bit, but sustainable food system is not just about the end product. It's about the beginning as well. So from the first seed that is grown into the soil, that's when we actually need to start focusing, not just all the way at the end. So that's why we need to focus on sustainable food production, methods at the farm level to begin with, at the farms that grows the plants, that grow the livestock even, and all the way to the processing companies. I know we have a lot of F&B companies here today, so your role is also very important. Sometimes you have some food lost within the processing, process that you need to rethink sometimes. It doesn't have to go to loss. A lot of time we see through the technologies that we identify every day. So these are simple things that we can look into to begin with, and then we can move on to adopting these technologies. So this is just my last word to emphasize that it's not just about the consumer, it's also about us who provide those products to the final consumer.
Well, thank you so much. This brings us to the end of this session. I have no doubt that if anyone can do it, you can. And I'm certain that with your passion and with the consistency that you continue to do and seeking research and information globally and here locally, I know your efforts will come into fruition. I hope to see you next year also in the Future Food series, and we will be discussing some of the results of your projects. Thank you so much for joining us today and for tuning in.